In the 2010s, the waning years of the Power Rangers franchise, Super Sentai was still consistent, and there was one series that traded the traditional spandex for leather suits. It was the 2012 to 2013 season called Tokumei Sentai Go-Busters. It went for a more realistic aesthetic, such as having the Rangers being a special ops program with workers constantly working on their mecha. Plus, the mecha battles were above average, and they emphasized the Rangers' individual mecha rather than just the combined gatai. Also, it's the only season of the decade to follow a single team of 3 Rangers at the start. However, Saban decided to skip this season because they were 3 years behind Super Sentai due to Nickelodeon forcing them to split seasons in two, and there was 1 year of reruns. Also, it had only 3 Rangers instead of 5, and the next season was dinosaur themed, so Saban skipped it to adapt the Dino season and went with a ninja themed season 2 years after. During the Ninja season, Saban decided to partner with Hasbro for producing toys and content from then on, and Hasbro didn't want to adapt the Animal or Space Sentai seasons, which were next in line, and decided to adapt Go-Busters out of order, which gave it a 7-year gap between adaptations, which is the longest of the franchise. And then Hasbro bought Entertainment One, and they got the rights to the entire franchise with it. So, with it, Hasbro made the first 2 seasons of their era of the franchise, Beast Morphers. Beast Morphers had better writing, plot, characters, and stories than the prior Neo-Saban era, and the motif of Go-Busters is cyberpunk special ops with some spy and animal influences. Hasbro's Beast Morphers decided to embrace the animal motif but kept some of the cyberpunk and special ops aspects. Go-Busters, on the other hand, came out right after Go-Kaiger, an anniversary season that's well known for being one of, if not the greatest Super Sentai season of all time. Because of this, people were disappointed in the subsequent season, and the TV ratings were low. To boost the ratings, halfway through the season, they made a whole new opening theme song. Also, the plot picked up at this point. However, Go-Busters still has passionate fans, and the cast is pretty successful. In this video, I'm comparing these two versions. Like Time Force and RPM, Beast Morphers made some changes to the story to capitalize and improve on the flaws of the Japanese show. Also, like many previous Power Rangers seasons, this season combines some episodes and stories for their American counterpart, such as taking stories from later episodes, expanding upon them, and using them in different episodes. Super Sentai seasons are usually better than their Power Rangers counterpart because it's the original footage and story, the writing is usually better, and the content is more mature. But there are some exceptions, and it's interesting to see how the American version utilizes the content and story. Power Rangers Beast Morphers did a fantastic job adapting Go-Busters. First of all, a Go-Busters adaptation was proposed by one of Saban's writers as Cybercorpse. However, it wasn't submitted and was unused. However, he came up with a way to adapt the villain as the Venjix virus from Power Rangers RPM, and Hasbro eventually used this for their twist in the end of the series and revealed that the mysterious villain Evox is actually the final form of Venjix from Power Rangers RPM. Lastly, Power Rangers Beast Morphers is the first Power Rangers series since Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from 1993 to 1995 to have more than one season, because the Neo-Saban seasons don't count because they added Super to the title. I'm gonna start this off with the motive. Go-Busters was made during the 20th anniversary of the Power Rangers, so it pays homage to the American Power Rangers. First of all, the computer virus villain, Messiah, looks like a giant floating skull, kind of like Zordon in Mighty Morphin and the Zordon era. Also, the Rangers have individual superpowers, which had been done multiple times in Super Sentai and is slightly more common in the Disney era of Power Rangers, such as Dino Thunder. Also, the Rangers have sunglasses in their uniforms, which is a reference to Power Rangers Jungle Fury. Lastly, they use the catchphrase. The main motive of Go-Busters is cyberpunk, as it has a dimension that digitizes matter, and the suits look like computer code when they morph. However, the cyberpunk motif is rather poorly written. The animal motif also makes no sense, because they have very little to do with animals, but they're each themed after a different animal: cheetah, jackrabbit, and gorilla. Jackrabbit is a motif that had never been used before, and it has never been used since, and looking at her design, it's obvious why we haven't gotten another bunny-themed ranger. The suits also resemble secret agents. Also, the Red Ranger has a transforming bike, and the Yellow Ranger has a kick attack that's nearly identical to the Grasshopper Rider kick in Kamen Rider. Beast Morphers keeps the agency motif by making it a private organization called Grid Battle Force. But the animal motif is explained better by making the Rangers enhanced with animal DNA. It also keeps the cyberpunk motif. So it's basically a mix of Power Rangers Jungle Fury and Power Rangers RPM. Plot. First of all, the plot of both series are pretty good. However, the Beast Morphers version is the opposite of the Go-Busters version. In Go-Busters, the plot is very episodic and boring for the first half, and then picks up in the second half with conflict between the villains and epic story culminations. Beast Morphers, on the other hand, has a more serialized and more plot-driven first season, adapting the first half of Go-Busters, and then the second season's plot has a far worse story arcs. However, the Beast Morphers second season still has some of the emotional weight from the Go-Busters arcs, and the episodic stories are more entertaining for both seasons. Both seasons have two Avatar villains fighting amongst themselves while challenging the Grid Battle Force / Go-Busters. However, the plot of Beast Morphers has a better storyline on how they were created, with them being dark avatars of intended Rangers and introduced together rather than one of them being the main villain and one being a secondary villain released later on. Also, in Beast Morphers, there's a reason why Roxy is destroyed for good, unlike Escape, whose deletion isn't explained. She's just has one final fight or being taken out of the story. However, Enter and Escape have better reasons for fighting amongst themselves than the avatars in Power Rangers. The reason is because Escape is loyal to Messiah, while Enter isn't. Beast Morphers does a better job introducing the Beat and Stag Buster duo. In Go-Busters, they're just thrown in. However, in Beast Morphers, they have a story where Nate becomes the Gold Ranger, and he creates his cyborg brother, Steel. Unlike Steel, Stag Buster is just another one of the Go-Busters buddy roids rather than a cyborg. Both Go-Busters and Beast Morphers have emotional storylines about family, with the Go-Busters plot slowly revealing how the Messiah virus was created and how their parents sacrificed themselves to keep it from assimilating our world, and the Beat Buster was partially absorbed by it too and is missing a lot of his code, so they have to be careful with the source code of Messiah. It has emotional stakes, and the Rangers are manipulated by Enter, who still has their parents' source code, so they have to put their family ties aside to save the world from the Viglass. Beast Morphers has the Red Ranger's father, the Mayor, being used as a vessel by Evox, and he has to find a way to use Dino Charge Ranger's technology to separate them instead of killing or freezing his father. Both of these plots have some major flaws. Go-Busters depends on the fact that the hyperspace dimension just happens to have the ability to turn matter into digital data, which makes no sense, and if they had sent it to any other dimension, the villains wouldn't have gotten as powerful, and the scientist would have survived. Beast Morphers has a flaw where the scientist, Nate, makes rash decisions that would be considered unethical with human experimentation, and does this too suddenly to create Rangers. Luckily, these actions do have consequences. Also, the plot of Season 2 is a major downgrade from the first season. But overall, the episodic stories of Beast Morphers are way better in plot than the Go-Busters stories, and Go-Busters misses out on interesting spy stories. Also, the first half of Go-Busters has a bad plot, and Beast Morphers completely improves on the first half of the season's plot. Also, Go-Busters' plot has 3 different endings, and the Vaglass forces are still active after all of them, which makes no sense. Beast Morphers only has 2 endings, and uses one as the ending of the first season, which is a great way to adapt the plot of this kind of series. However, Go-Busters' second half is way better, with perfect goals of the villains and protagonists. There's twists, decent character development, and the setup is great. Enter is well known for being one of Super Sentai's better villains, and his arc in the second half is fantastic, and so is Escape, who has a decent arc. Beast Morphers does a mediocre job adapting the second half of the season. Go-Busters has a serialized story near the end where the data of the Messiah virus is split up into cards, and Enter and Escape use them as villains. However, Beast Morphers doesn't use this because their version of Messiah is still at large through most of the second season. However, Beast Morphers' second season still has a good story, and it has some good plot elements. It also has good connections to Dino Charge, and Evox has a decent role, storyline, and a twist. And it uses one of the coolest mecha battles in Go-Busters as the fight scene in the season finale. The character arcs also have good resolutions in both of these series. To pick a winner, I'm going to have to go with Beast Morphers because they're both inconsistent, but the good parts of Beast Morphers outweigh the bad parts. Writing is another important part of a show. Power Rangers is notorious for really bad writing, while Super Sentai's writing is a lot better. However, Beast Morphers was made by Hasbro and isn't directly adapted from the most recent Super Sentai season. Instead, it's adapted from a prior series that aired several years before. The Neo-Saban era cared more about brand recognition, and the story and writing was just a watered-down remake of the Super Sentai season, and they made really bad decisions, such as combining Super Sentai seasons that don't go together, and choosing seasons with motifs they had already used because they liked the motif more and it was easier to market. Hasbro and Saban partnered for creating Beast Morphers, and the writers did a better job and had a good story to work with. The writing of Beast Morphers is actually pretty good, as the characters have interesting dynamics. The world building actually fits the Power Rangers franchise. And in the Power Rangers timeline, we go from Lost Galaxy and Time Force in the early 21st century to a Men in Black style society in 2025 with Power Rangers SPD. If the Power Rangers franchise had continued what they had been doing with the Neo-Saban era, they would have eventually had to retcon it, revealing that SPD is in an alternate timeline. But Beast Morphers has world building that's actually more technologically advanced than the real world because it's cyberpunk. This feels like it's in between the 2 time frames seen in the franchise. The script is pretty good. Character backgrounds and stories are pretty well written. The characters have decent flaws and good individual story arcs. It has some flaws, such as corny dialogue, ridiculous humor about 2 clumsy security guards that are the traditional Power Rangers comic relief. However, some of it is actually funny. Go-Busters is the exact opposite. Super Sentai has better writing than Power Rangers because Super Sentai is rated TV PG, while Power Rangers is rated TV Y7, which is basically rated G. Also, Super Sentai has been more consistent throughout its 50-year run than Power Rangers, that has been extremely inconsistent. Go-Busters came out right after a pirate-themed anniversary season that had an excellent cast, script, and movies. Because it came out after Gokaiger, people saw it as a major downgrade. Also, the writing is extremely flawed compared to Gokaiger and nowhere near as good. The writing is just okay. The world building doesn't fit the franchise. The Enetron concept isn't explained and is very stupid and derivative. Plus, Go-Busters tried to pay homage to the Power Rangers, and the bad writing honestly feels like they were trying to make fun of the American Power Rangers. However, the character dynamics and story picks up in the second half, and the writing gets a little better. The story and characters are written pretty good though. The Go-Busters have weaknesses and superpowers, but they aren't connected and aren't written very well. Power Rangers Beast Morphers does a good job adapting the weaknesses of the team, where they wrote it so the virus corrupted their animal DNA, and they linked the weaknesses to the animals that they were themed after. Also, the campiness of Go-Busters fits Power Rangers more than Super Sentai, and as a result, Power Rangers took the opportunity and it fit. For writing, Beast Morphers wins. Soundtrack is always important. When you think of Power Rangers, one of the first things that you'll probably remember is the theme song. The same is true for Super Sentai, but Super Sentai themes are a lot less repetitive. They have full songs instead of just 30-second promos, and all are different from each other. Plus, they have an ending song too, and some other songs in the soundtrack. Also, they made a whole new theme song when Toei ended Kamen Rider 4s and started Kamen Rider Wizard. A part of this was because the ratings were lagging. The theme song of Go-Busters is way better than the theme song of Beast Morphers. It doesn't even come close. The Beast Morphers song is just an electronic rock song with lyrics similar to the Go-Go Power Rangers songs of the Neo-Saban era, and honestly, it's not even as good as the recent Neo-Saban era songs such as Dino Charge and Ninja Steel. So for the theme song, Go-Busters definitely wins. Quality. For quality, both of these seasons leave a lot to be desired. They both suffer from bad special effects, the fight choreography of Go-Busters is just okay, and Go-Busters also has terrible sound effects. However, the mecha are very good, and the fight scenes with the giant robots are excellent. Beast Morphers made a lot of original footage for the first season, and a lot of the fight scenes are honestly better than the fights from Go-Busters. However, Beast Morphers Season 2 uses a lot more footage from Go-Busters, which on one hand results in less original footage and worse pacing, but on the other hand, it kept a lot of excellent combat from Go-Busters, including some great battles against Enter in his robot form. However, the quality of Beast Morphers Season 1 was way better than Go-Busters. However, the second season is the opposite, and the CGI is even worse. Another thing about Beast Morphers that I like is the morphing sequence. I like it a lot more than the Go-Busters change. Overall, I'm going to give a point to Beast Morphers for this. Pacing. Pacing is another important part of a series. Go-Busters was mostly well paced, and Beast Morphers' first season was excellently paced, and is way better than the first half of Go-Busters' pacing. However, Beast Morphers Season 2 was boring and episodic in a large part of the season. In fact, the pacing of Go-Busters picks up after the first 25 episodes and is way better. So for the pacing, I'm gonna go ahead and give Go-Busters a point. Acting. Acting is another important part of a good series, and both Go-Busters and Beast Morphers have decent acting. The actors and actresses of Go-Busters have had more successful careers though. Go-Busters is way older, and the cast has landed a few more major roles. The cast of Beast Morphers is very good, however, none of them are well known, and most of them have only a few minor roles outside of Power Rangers. It has some reoccurring members, such as the cast of Power Rangers Dino Charge, Austin St. John also returns as his iconic character Jason Lee Scott for the first time since Wild Force in 2002. Plus, Olivia Tennant from Power Rangers RPM returns as Dr. K. Although the cast isn't very noticeable, they all did pretty well. In fact, compared to their Japanese counterparts in Go-Busters, there's only 2 Go-Busters actors that I think did a better job than their American version. Hiroya Matsumoto, who portrayed Beatbuster, which he had previously played Magi Yellow in Magi Ranger. Him and Jinai Nasaru, who portrayed Enter. Enter's performance is way better than his counterpart, Blaze, played by Colby Strong, especially in the first season. Unlike the aspects I mentioned earlier, the acting of Beast Morphers Season 2 is actually better than the acting of the first season, so I'm going to give Beast Morphers a point for the acting. Themes and story. Both Go-Busters and Beast Morphers have a fantastic story with themes interwoven with them. Go-Busters has themes about destiny, growing up, and sacrifice. The story of Go-Busters is both more mature and sillier than Beast Morphers at the same time, kind of like the difference between Power Rangers Dino Thunder and Abba Ranger, its counterpart. The overarching story of Beast Morphers honestly isn't that good, but it has an emphasis on environmentalism, alternative energy sources, and the nature of humanity. Plus, it does a great job linking multiple seasons of Power Rangers and even references seasons of the Neo-Saban era. Also, the individual story arcs are very good and linger on into the mediocre second season. Plus, it has mature themes about bureaucracy, ambition, relationship with family, and many others. The individual episodes do a lot better with themes. Go-Busters does this a few times, but they aren't exactly better. For the story, I'm gonna have to say Go-Busters is better, and I'll give them a point for it, but for the themes, Beast Morphers are better, so I'm going to go ahead and give Beast Morphers a point for themes. Characters. The characters of Beast Morphers and Go-Busters are pretty good. They both have well-developed characters with good story arcs. The Yellow and Red Rangers have story arcs about their maturity. The Blue Buster has a story arc about wisdom and his goal of being an engineer that's eventually completed in the end. And the Gold Ranger has an arc about his willingness to sacrifice himself and how he has very little hope of surviving due to the position he's in, and he's an engineer too, but he admits that the Blue Ranger is better than him. He ends up saving the Red Ranger in the end, and also the Buddy Roids are decent characters in Go-Busters. The Go-Busters switches things up and makes the Blue Ranger the smart one of the group, similar to how the Power Rangers frequently depict the Blue Rangers as nerdy characters, which is different from their Sentai counterpart. The Go-Busters have more consistent character writing than Beast Morphers. Also, the villains are pretty good and are magnificent villains. Enter is well known for being one of Super Sentai's best villains, and he's a sadistic mastermind. Beast Morphers changes a lot. First of all, the characters are just getting started in becoming action heroes, rather than being affiliated with a special ops program for years before, with the exception of the Blue Ranger, who was already in it for a while. Devin is the son of a mayor, and he's one of multiple African-American Red Rangers, most notably the Red Ranger of a similar series, RPM. Devin has a fantastic story arc about his relationship with his father, and he starts to care about others as the series goes on, not just being a selfish gamer trying to dominate. At the start of the series, he has a good story where he proves himself and gets chosen to be the team leader, while the Blue and Yellow Rangers fight over it. The Yellow Ranger, Zoe, is the only woman on the team. She's prideful and reckless, and at the start of the series, she's a laundry service worker who gets chosen because she's in the right place at the right time helping Devin. She has a decent and realistic backstory where she tried to make the team in the beginning before the series but failed, and blames it on the fact that she was working multiple jobs as a young adult. Also, she has a good story arc about keeping her mother from exposing the Rangers' secret identities, and has to cover up the fact that she's a Power Ranger instead of just a laundry service worker to her family. But she has a good story dealing with both her mother, who's a reporter, and her brother. The Blue Ranger is an Indian man who's more like the traditional Sentai Blue archetype, where they're serious and calm, and he's loyal to Grid Battle Force and avoids breaking the rules. He's also the only one of the team that was the original intended Ranger, because the other characters saved him from being used as a base for an avatar character. He's also the commander's son. He likes art, although his mother hates it, and they have an interesting story arc about having to accept their differences due to their varying hobbies. Plus, in the first season, he has an excellent arc about the relationship with Roxy, and the cyber villain uses it to deceive him. In the end of the season, he doesn't hesitate to destroy her to save the real Roxy. The Gold Ranger is a nerdy scientist. However, he has a good story arc about hiding his crush on Zoe, which leads to Grid Battle Force removing their silly rule saying that Rangers can't date Rangers. Also, he has an arc about his relationship with his cyborg brother, who has an arc about trying to be more human, similar to Data in Star Trek, and the Power Rangers previously did that in Megaforce with Robo Knight. However, unlike Robo Knight, Steel's arc actually gets somewhere, and Steel is revived as a human through the morphing grid in the end. Beast Morphers switched around the common Power Rangers Blue Ranger archetype, and made the Gold Ranger the nerdy character, making this the opposite of a bunch of Power Rangers / Super Sentai differences. For this team, I like the Grid Battle Force team better than the Go-Busters team. The villains are also pretty good. Roxy and Blaze have a more interesting origin story than their counterparts, and represent the worst parts of the people that they're avatars of. Roxy is a fantastic villain. Also, like Enter in Go-Busters, she's sadistic, she's also sassy, and a femme fatale, similar to her counterpart Escape. However, Roxy is a way better villain than Escape. But that can't be said for Enter. Enter is a way better villain, but Blaze is still just okay, and they use the Dark Buster suit that Enter uses in the end of the series from the start, making them more like Dark Ranger counterparts, which fits their origin story. Evox and Messiah, the main villain, are pretty much the same, although the twist fixes the continuity of the Power Rangers franchise in Beast Morphers, where it finishes off a story arc that was left from RPM. The Power Rangers characters are honestly more intriguing than their Go-Busters counterpart. However, the Go-Busters characters have decent writing and arcs too. Both of these are pretty good, but I'm going to have to give a point to Beast Morphers for characters. Conclusion. Go-Busters is a pretty good season. It has excellent mecha battles, and all 4 Go-Busters movies are pretty good. But it still has major flaws. First of all, I don't like the comedy. Beast Morphers has the same flaw though, with Neo-Saban style humor. Also, Go-Busters is not very popular over in Japan where it's made. Beast Morphers Season 1 is way better than Go-Busters. It's one of the greatest Power Rangers seasons versus an average Super Sentai season. However, Beast Morphers Season 2 is extremely iffy. But overall, Power Rangers Beast Morphers is an excellent start to the Hasbro era of the franchise. By a score of 6-3, I'm going to crown Beast Morphers as better than its Super Sentai counterpart. Beast Morphers made fantastic decisions, with some being for the better and some being for the worse. While watching both series back to back, there were several episodes where I liked the Go-Busters counterpart more, and several where I liked the Beast Morphers counterpart more. But when it comes down to it, Beast Morphers has the better beginning, and Go-Busters has the better ending. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video.